Hello students from around the world and welcome to another episode of the IELTS Plus English podcast, where today we're going to be talking about entrepreneurship. A difficult word for today's episode, isn't it? The topic is entrepreneurship. So let's just start with pronunciation. Entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship. So entrepreneur is the person. Entrepreneurship is the activity. Entrepreneurship is the activity of starting your own business, taking on risk. Now, I wouldn't say I'm an entrepreneur because I don't take on risk. I'm very risk averse, but certainly the topic of starting businesses, creating things, selling things, I'm very passionate about, and I look forward to this topic. So that's the pronunciation. No student questions today. I think we're going to keep it a little simpler today. I've done some very long episodes recently, so we'll keep it a bit simple. Also, tough vocabulary today, I would say. Pitch, venture, monetize. I think if you study these and memorize them, they're quite easy to use, but just on the surface, it's a fairly tough looking list of vocabulary. Obviously, you can find this in my textbook, and that is available on www.britplus.net. Download it there. Of course, that has all of my structures, everything to help you with part 1, part 2, part 3, and that is what you'll hear me use in today's answers. So I am going to give you a student challenge. You cannot miss that. So let's give you a student challenge. And it's a question. It's part 1 question again. And a simple one. The question is, have you ever started your own business? But I want to add something here. If you have, tell me what the business is. Of course, that's an easy detail. It's a what detail. Remember, I always say I like what and why details. They're the best ways to add detail to your answers. So, have you ever started your business, your own business? Yes, I have. What? Tell me what it is. If you haven't, no, why? Tell me why. Why haven't you? Is it you haven't had the opportunity? You need more money? You need more time? You have a career? Why? So, depending on your answer, I want a what or why detail. And that's how I do my part 1 answers as well. I'm always giving what or why details, really, most of the time. Let's get going. Part 1, some questions. So pretty quickly into it today. The first question is, do you know anyone who is an entrepreneur? I know plenty of entrepreneurs. I think that Seoul has a really nice entrepreneur culture, and there's a lot of people starting businesses. Seoul is the city that I live in. And so I have friends who've started restaurants, cafes, education businesses. I've started my education business. So yeah, I know plenty of entrepreneurs. Next question. Have you ever thought about starting your own business? So have I ever thought about it? Yes, and I have done it. So I have my own education business, both online and offline. I've thought about several other businesses that I could start, but one of my problems is I'm very risk averse. So, making a startup or some risky venture is not, it doesn't work with my character. I need safety, I need comfort. So the business I've started is safe, and I've developed slowly and carefully. That's part 1's done. I'm being very honest today, by the way. These are very honest answers. I am risk averse. I think I've told you that before, actually. Let's move on to part 2. Now, let me read it first. Describe an entrepreneur you admire. There's someone who immediately comes to my mind, but I feel like you won't know him. So I'm going to give you a little background before I give you my answer. The person who comes to my mind is Stephen Bartlett. Stephen Bartlett. Now, the spelling is Stephen, Steven, Bartlett, Bartlett. He's a really interesting British entrepreneur. He's so young. I'm 37. I think he's 30. He's barely over 30. Incredibly rich, incredibly successful. But if you want an interesting podcast, his podcast, Diary of a CEO, you can search for it in YouTube, is really, really good. It's wonderful production, incredible guests. And he's a really interesting entrepreneur who I follow and have a lot of interest in. So let's answer. You can search him before I start this answer, but let's put 2 minutes on the clock and my time starts now. I'd like to tell you about a British entrepreneur called Stephen Bartlett. About 5 years ago, I came across a podcast called Diary of a CEO. I love podcasts, and I'm always looking for interesting business-related podcasts, and his one popped up. At that time, it was not popular. It was a quite small scale, not many listeners, not that many. But over the past 5 years, it has grown exponentially, and it's become, I think it's the number one business podcast in the world or in Europe. It's really, really interesting and popular. And he has become quite a significant figure from the UK. Successful businesses, several new businesses. He appears on TV, and it's been amazing to see his rise. So let me tell you a little more about Stephen Bartlett. He is very young. He's intelligent. He's really well spoken and seems incredibly intelligent. But interestingly, he dropped out of school. I don't believe he went to university. So, in terms of his educational background, it's limited. But he's obviously a really switched on guy. He has a lot of bright ideas, and as I said, he's really well spoken, so he can deliver very strong pitches, whether that's to companies or just pitching to his audience through his podcast. He has really inspired me and had amazing conversations with other entrepreneurs on his podcast, and that's helped me get ideas for my business and my own podcast. Oh, okay, that was a bit quicker than I expected. I tell you what, let me give you a little thought on that. Some of my students really, really struggle with time management. And that means very often they finish too early, and they have no idea that that's happening. So they'll finish after 1 minute 30 seconds. Oh, Jack, I didn't know, and I don't know what to say. There's 30 seconds remaining. One thing you must be doing in your, part of your IELTS speaking practice preparation is time management practice. You must answer part twos with the timer in front of you and develop a feeling for 1 minute and then 2 minutes. Very often I can feel, okay, I'm around a minute, and then I move to the next section. And I can feel, probably time is running out. I should move to my opinion. In this case today, I did miss it. I was a little bit late, but you got to develop feeling for time. That's a very important skill. Okay, let's go to part 3. And the first question is, what are the main challenges faced by entrepreneurs? Probably the main challenges, the main challenge would be investment, just getting investment and having enough money to start whatever business they want. Sometimes this means having money themselves, saving the money and preparing it, which is challenging, or they have to deliver a pitch to investors and get the money that way. And that must be incredibly challenging, something I've not experienced. The next question, do you think entrepreneurship is suitable for everyone? Absolutely not. I think entrepreneurship is really, it depends on your character. There are people who are born to be entrepreneurs, and there are people who are born not to be. Now, to be honest, I fall into the second one. I'm not going to take on lots of risk and start new companies and open a coffee shop, open a restaurant. That's not my character. I need safety. I'm fortunate that I've been able to build a business that is safe, relatively. But I think that if you are going to be an entrepreneur, you need to have a high risk tolerance. You need to be brave, and you need to be exceptionally proactive. Good, some lovely vocabulary today. I hope you're writing this down and studying hard. The last question: how do you think entrepreneurship will change in the future? I think we're seeing some huge changes now, but one of the biggest ways that it will change will be the way that you monetize. Meaning the way, perhaps you already have your service or product. You're always going to have some service or product, but how do you monetize it? Are you going to sell it for a flat rate? Okay, like my textbook is about $7.95. So you buy it and you're done, you have the product. Or do you have a subscription model? Do you offer it for free, but there is advertising and you get money from the adverts? I think in the future, there are going to be constantly new ways to monetize. And that's what we're seeing right now. And I think that's really exciting for entrepreneurs and also for the customers. Excellent. I think perhaps my part 3 answers were a little on the short side, perhaps, but I was quite happy with them because they were really concise and I used the language that I wanted to. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm happy. And that is everything for entrepreneurship. I hope you learnt a lot. Next week, quite an easy, calm, something we can all talk about: films and cinema. That's next week's topic. Looking forward to that. So do have a nice week this week. Study unbelievably hard. And I'll see you next Monday for our topic, films and cinema. See you then. Bye-bye.